and teams are about relationships and people. And whether that was when I was in my corporate role, the times that we won and we won as teams, it was because we had the right people with the right direction.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Gentle Art of Crushing It. My name is Nathan. I am your host today, and I'm super honored and excited to have the one, the only Mr. Billy Keels. Billy, how you doing?
The one, the only. What's up, Nathan? How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you so much for your time. I'm super excited having you on the show today. Just hearing your story, learning from you, and just making sure all of the knowledge that you have can be shared with our audience. Thank you very much for being here. Yeah,
man, my pleasure. And all the knowledge I have, hopefully that will go more than like 15 seconds or something like that, and we'll be able to add a little bit of value today, and we'll see what we come up with.
Awesome, very cool. So hey, for everyone who doesn't know who Billy Keels is, why don't you kick us off, letting us know a little bit about yourself, what you do in life, where you're at in life, and then we'll kind of go into our questions and conversation around success and success mindset. So who is Billy?
You know what, man? So I'm going to do this like the very Reader's Digest version, because Billy is an individual who today is a husband, a father, a son, a cousin, an uncle, and someone who is living the best version of his life possible. And that is after having, I guess I was born. When I was born, by the time I was 12, we lived in 3 different states. I say we because it's me, my brother, and sister. Come from a home of very middle-class family. Someone would say lower middle-class family. Both my parents worked 2 jobs. I watched them struggle a lot financially and kind of trying to understand the things that they needed to do in order to make ends meet for us. At the same time, I saw a work ethic that just even to this day has stayed with me. That realized the importance of education, probably so much it was like overly focused on education, right? Because I was the person I got the really good grades. I did what I was supposed to do, and I followed the path that everybody else was telling me that I did. Yeah, exactly. Something like that. At least my brother and sister don't say the same thing, but hey, it's no big deal. No, but I mean, went to college, got 2 degrees. Afterwards, my parents ended up divorcing, so a product of a divorced household. And at the same time, watched and did everything that I was supposed to do. Got rejected from my dream job, not once, but twice, Nathan. And so that was really, really something that was difficult for me to deal with at that time, because I was used to studying, getting good grades, and then getting the reward, right? That kind of like dopamine cycle. It was the same job. Well, it was the same job, but I got rejected twice.
Oh, sorry.
So it was, I wanted to work for a company called P&G, Procter & Gamble, because when I got my college degree, got a marketing degree, then I went back and got another degree in Spanish. I thought I was going to, I'd seen the world. I'd started to travel, went to Europe, thought I was going to come back, add this like European thing, second degree, and was going to get the job, but I got rejected twice. But what that taught me was, my life completely changed. And I know that I've shared this with you in the past, but when I got rejected the second time, it opened up my world to something that I never, ever had imagined, because I'm originally from the Midwest, from Columbus, Ohio. And when I got rejected the second time, it actually opened up a door, because a really good friend of mine named Andy, big shouts out to Andy, told me about this job of people who were working and traveling around the world based in St. Louis, Missouri. I ended up applying. There were about, I think, probably 6,000 people, something like that. At least that's what the legend says. And I was one of 26 that got hired. That gave me the opportunity to see the world. In 5 years, Nathan, I'd worked and traveled throughout some 58 different countries, challenged the way that I grew up, thinking that things were supposed to be done, understanding that the right way was this way, only to find out there are many different ways to get to a result. I ended up that job completely changed my mind.
In what sense?
Really, really opened that, because remember I've mentioned before, like I got the good grades, I was supposed to get the good job, and that's what I was doing. And I took a 1-year sabbatical, and I just wanted to kind of decompress. Well, what that did for me, or the 5 years before that in the 58 countries, it really gave me the strength right? The mental fortitude and emotional fortitude to realize like, hey, listen, I'm going to go out and I'm going to challenge just the way that I think about things or the way that I've thought about things up until now and just kind of take a year off. And so I was accepted at a university in Paris called the Sorbonne. I couldn't say that when I got there, by the way, but because I didn't speak any French, I didn't know how to say my name is, je m'appelle Billy, and all this kind of stuff. But I stuck with it. I went through a lot of nights where it was really, really tough and challenging because I was by myself. I didn't know anybody. And you know what? It's been 21 years that I've still stayed in Europe. I've not gone back to the U.S. to reside. I've lived in from Paris down to a town called Montpellier. I lived in a town called Cagliari in Italy, and I've called Barcelona, Spain home for the last 15 years. And aside from that, and then I will kind of be quiet because I said I was going to make this really quick. I ended up getting got married to a wonderful woman from Spain. We got married back in 2008. Our first son was born in 2009. And our second son was born about 18 months later. So I always joke with people and say, hey, listen, if you ever get a chance to take a 1-year sabbatical, be really, really careful. Because mine so far has turned into 21 years, 3 countries, a marriage, 2 kids, and 4 additional languages. So, so that's just a little bit about this guy from the Midwest of Columbus, Ohio, and some of the things that I've been able to do.
Globetrotter.
Yeah, Columbus Globetrotter, something like that. Oh, by the way, I have also, after 26 years in the corporate world, I decided that it was time for me to do something else. So I left the corporate world. I had a couple things happen in real life, and I was very fortunate because I started taking some action about a decade before that. And so very recently decided to move on to the next phase of life and leave the corporate career behind. So
very cool. And what were you doing in the corporate world?
So that first 5 years was kind of doing this corporate, let's call it on-site operations, traveling all around the world. And then afterwards I got into IT, started on the hardware side of things in the south of France, and then moved into the enterprise application space. And then I did that for about, 16 years, something like that. Most recently worked for a very, very large German market-leading ERP ERP company, and I did a number of different roles, but the largest business I managed was about $100 million business, and I did that across Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Very cool. And I'm curious to hear about kind of some of your success stories, or a success story that you like to share with people when you're asked this question. But before we jump into that, one thing that I like to ask and have a better understanding around, first before we go into the success stories, what does success mean to you, right? And maybe how has that changed over your lifetime, I guess, because you've seen a lot, been through a lot, done a lot of things, right? And I'm curious how that's changed and what it means for you maybe today.
Yeah, so what it means for me today is being able to really do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. Like that is what success really, truly means to me today, which is very different than what success meant to me growing up, because I watched my parents struggle, Nathan. And when you watch your parents struggle financially, it's just no fun. And what my parents did actually, which made in doing what they really wanted to do to help us, I think it made it definitely made it more challenging for me and my brother and sister, right? Because we were always in a good school district, like public school district, but my parents were working 2 jobs for us to afford to be there. So when a lot of my friends had brand new cars that their parents bought for them, like we didn't have that. And so what it did was it really gave me this false impression of you have to have money, like you need money to be successful. Like money is the epitome of success. But I can promise you that when I was making a lot of money working for that really large company that I talked to you about before, I missed my son's 3rd birthday, Nathan, and it absolutely crushed me emotionally, because that day I decided to be at a business meeting instead of being where I wanted to be. So that night of my son's 3rd birthday, while my wife and my in-laws were all together, I was chasing a title, I was chasing money, and I realized that I'll never get that time back. And so that's when I start realizing, that's one of the main points in my life when I started realizing, like, hey, look, success is not just about money. Success is not just about a title. Sometimes, right, you realize that all the time it's about being able to have control over your time, being able to invest your time with the people that you love the most, wherever you want to be, and doing it, in the way that makes the most sense for you. Just like last weekend, me and my wife, we took our kids away and we went to a town with 176 people. got off the grid.
That's called a village in Europe, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's called a pueblo in here in Spain, like, and so it's like, those are the things that make the most sense. There was no TV, there was no iPad, there was no iPhone. We were in a chimney, like a fireplace, and just walking around, right? I mean, that to me is success, because we are in a position in our lives now where we've made a lot of decisions. Those decisions that we made, sometimes very difficult decisions that we made in the past, or that I made in the past, to get to the point where I am in life today, and where my wife and I are with our kids. So, definitely been a change of what success was, which was being focused purely on financial, to now realizing that there's nothing more important than being able to manage and invest your time the way that you want it. Like,
do you think that shift in perspective comes with age, or can a young person already think that way? I'm just curious, right? And I'm asking because I can relate to a lot all the parent stories that you're sharing, right? And I know that having kids changed me and changed how I viewed the world and thought about things, including success and money and all the things. But I'm curious if you don't go through those stages of life, can you already have that mindset?
I know people that were very clear, even when they were in the corporate role, that they were using corporate role for what it was, right? Which was gain access to training and, make a really good salary. And then that salary they used that salary early on, like in their 20s, to start purchasing assets, those assets that were kicking off cash flow, which created a runway to owning their time. And they did that in their 20s. I was not able to do that. Like, I was focused on, hey, I got to I got to keep moving up the ladder. I got to keep moving up the ladder, because that's what I thought was the right thing. And it took for me was what happened with my son. Yeah. That is what started to, because I was not being congruent. Like, I was like, hey, I want to be that father who's there, who's present. But then I realized it's not just being physically present, but you've got to be physically and mentally present, right? Yeah. But to answer your question, I think, and I've known other people that even early on in their 20s in the same corporate environment that made different decisions that I did. They were very focused on just getting to owning their freedom. Some of them took a lot less. Some of them left corporate. Some of them stayed in corporate as long as I did. But they were very clear on where they wanted to go. And for me, I was not that clear. It took me until my late 30s to really get clear. But then after that, I went all in, and it took me a decade. A decade later, I chose to leave corporate. I really liked it, by the way. I liked my corporate experience. I get bummed out because I hear so many people bash corporate, and I just am not. That's not my thing. Because I've received way too many positive things. Great salary, access to training with some really, really smart people, amazing industries, and my experience was positive. I just had real life things that happened that made me realize once again, like, hey, Billy, you know what? This is a really great kind of opportunity, but there's real life is calling. And so I was fortunate to be in a position later to say, hey, listen, made some difficult decisions in the past, going to make another one and leave corporate. And so far, so good.
And would you say that's your favorite success story, just being able to leave corporate? Or do you have another success story that you like to share with people if ever asked?
I guess the success, the thing that a lot of people will talk about is, hey, you're able to leave corporate in your 40s. Well, yeah, that was kind of cool. But I guess the bigger success for me is being able to now be able to fly back to the U.S. when I want. I have a father who had some really terrible health problems. And so to me, it's, thank you. He's doing much better today, but that was one of the reasons that it was time for me to leave corporate, right? Because I realized that there's something about seeing your father having machines keeping him alive, right? When he's in the ICU, and it made me reflect and just realize, like, hey, listen, I want to be doing something else. And so that was a part of it. But the success, some people would say it's the leaving the corporate, but for me, it's, it is being able to get on a plane and not have to worry about, okay, well, what day of the week is it? How much does the plane ticket cost? Or even like being able to play video games with my kids. Like, this year is it's probably the thing I've talked about the most, because that to me is knowing that I'm owning my time. Before, I didn't give myself the opportunity to even sit down and play video games because I was so busy with what I was doing in my corporate role and in my mind. And I was like, that's a waste of time. But when I can sit down and I can play video games with my kids and we're like having fun, engaging, like, to me, that's another measure of success, because we're
you're
bonding,
beating
we're
them at
laughing, and well, not really. So
that means you need to spend more time with the video games, Billy. Come on.
should I do that while they're at school?
Yeah. Well, you have the freedom of time and choice, right? That's how you talk about success.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Note to self. Play more video games. No, but it's fun when I'm playing with the kids. It's not as fun when I'm playing by myself.
No, for sure, of course. And maybe this is what you were sharing before when you were talking about missing your kid's third birthday, right? I'm curious if you'd be open to sharing like an incredibly difficult experience that you went through in life and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, the thing that helped me to change was missing my son's third birthday. Like that was a big pivotal point for me, just in terms of the decisions that I needed to make as head of household and things like that. So that was a big one. But there was another. Yeah, go ahead. There's something else I want to tell you.
Yeah, I'm just curious to put things into context, because often I feel like our audience, people who listen to these stories, right, and people that have gone through difficult times, that have found success, et cetera, I found that oftentimes can't realistically put it into context in terms of like a timeline for these things, right? And I'm curious in your case, because it's different for everyone, but in your case, did you miss your son's third birthday and then wake up the next day and things were different, either mindset or activities or where you spent your time and money, or did it take a time for you to transition? I'm curious, right? And I see you're grabbing something, so maybe it's the secret recipe book. I love it.
Yeah, so I don't. Hopefully, people are watching the video version, because you just mentioned something that is really important to me. Like, and if you should see this. So that happened in October of 2012. I don't know if you will actually be able to see this or not, but you won't be able to see it. But here it says October 2012. So what happened when I got back from that trip? I had to sit down and I literally wrote down my goals and said what I wanted to do. At the time, I was focused really on real estate investing. I've since evolved in doing a number of different things. But this was about how do I get real estate to create a level of income that I needed, that was decoupled from me actually doing the work, and to be able to do that in a 60-month or 5-year period. I needed that because I needed to be able to see it, because that's how things work best for me when I go from theory to action, to take action. It did not take me 60 months. It didn't take me 5 years. It took me 18 months to accomplish this goal that is written here that you can't see. And the reason I say that is, one, to answer your question. So I actually literally sat down and wrote it, and I keep this near me in my office so I can actually see, one, that usually we heavily underestimate the things that we can do, especially on a 5-year time frame. I think somebody famous said it, and that's true, because that happened to me. Like, I thought it was going to take 5 years. Well, guess what? It only took 18 months. But what that also does is it answers your question, and it shows that when you write things down, you have a much higher probability of actually attaining whatever goal that you set for yourself. And usually when you write it down, you should probably even push yourself a little bit further. I started doing that after that. So yes, so I did actually sit down and I did write that down because I needed that.
Yeah, for those who aren't watching the video version of this, it's handwritten down, not typed out on a piece of paper, right? I found that to be a critical difference when you handwrite things down. And sorry, when I asked you about that, I cut you off. I think you were going to share another.
No, there was one other thing that happened to me. So it's like and this changed my life, right? Because I think at the end of the day, you have to choose your life and then live the choices that you make, right? Yep. And this is part of. In 1995, so I don't come from money. I don't come from a family with money. And like I said, I watched my parents struggle. So for me, I was working. I was cleaning wrestling mats in college, and I used part of that to pay for some of my tuition. I took out a bunch of loans, and I got some scholarships, right? Some grants. But one of the things, after I got rejected from my dream job the first time, came down, sat down, what's the plan? What do I need to do to get that job? I'm going to get a second degree. I'm going to get some overseas experience. So I got accepted at a program through the University of Virginia to actually live overseas and live in Spain. And so the thing that I told myself is I worked really, really hard. I saved some money, and I'm going to become fluent in Spanish. Like that, it was just very simple. Like I was just going to be fluent in Spanish because it costs a lot of money, and I was going to be there for 3 months. And I got really good grades in Spanish in high school and college. Okay. Well, there's a huge difference, Nathan, and I'm sure you know this. Yes. It's a huge difference between getting a good grade on the test when you can actually think about it for 30 minutes between what is the conjugation from to run today to run tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing. And when you get off the bus and there's someone speaking to you in the language fluently and you don't understand a
Local
word that they're saying,
accents.
a local accent, and you're just freaking out. Well, guess what I did? I chose to stay with other people that sounded like me, from the same culture as me, and I stayed in this little bubble, right? And it wasn't because I just completely felt good. I met great friends. That was one thing, so it was really cool. But the reality was I was afraid to confront looking, sounding foolish. And so what I realized was at the end of that 3 months, I failed myself because I didn't challenge myself. I didn't do enough time speaking with locals, studying by myself. Yeah. And I went back and I felt like a failure. Now, of course, I learned some Spanish and stuff like that. But what that did for me, and this is the lack of success, but what it did is it drove me to say, if I ever have another opportunity to live overseas, the next time I'm going to do it differently. And so in September of 2001, 2 weeks after 9/11, when I landed in Paris, France, it was completely opposite because I went there by myself. I didn't know anybody. And so every time I even heard English, American English language, it was like I went the opposite way because I needed to get into the local language, the local culture, go through the frustrating times, go through the difficulties, because when I came out on the other side, now this time was a year later, I've never gone back. I've never gone back to the U.S.
And by the way, if you want to continue the podcast in French, we can, right? You know that.
Oui. J'en étais sûr.
So you came prepared.
We won't do that. We won't do that.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Billy. And let's shift the conversation a little bit here. Yeah. Given like everything that you've been through, extraordinary success according to all measures, right? At least, most importantly, according to yours, right? Your definition. But if you were to go back in time to, Columbus, Billy, right? When you were 16, 18, anything like that, what would you do differently, or what would you tell that 18-year-old Billy?
What I started realizing was, number one, that it's okay to fail. I still struggle with this because I'm a recovering perfectionist. So when you do things a certain way for a really long time and you get that reinforcement, it's difficult to realize that it's about how can you get through what you don't understand as quickly as possible, because that's where the learning happens. That's one of the things that I would tell myself. And the second thing I would tell myself is it doesn't do you a lot of good to have a whole bunch of money just sitting in your bank account. What I mean by that is, because I thought that money was, remember you asked me earlier about success, and I thought it was about how much money do you have? Well, for me, it was about money in the bank. And when I saw that, it made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. What I didn't realize is that money was not multiplying, that money was not moving, that money was not serving the utility value that it has, which is actually to be somewhere in some type of an asset that is actually allowing it to multiply. Not money for money's sake, but money for being able to have more control over my time, so that later in life, when it was about, do I get on the plane to go to this business meeting for this thing that I don't even remember a decade later, or do I just take a personal day off because I know that there's enough income continuously coming in that, you know what, it's going to be okay. I'll miss this meeting. I'll take a personal day or two off. And so that's what I would tell myself would be, number one, we'll just go ahead and do things faster. Number two, don't worry about having the money just sitting in the bank. Figure out what you need to be doing with it, because had I started understanding what it was like to really truly invest in assets, in teams early on, maybe I would have been that guy at 25 years old and out of the corporate and doing my own thing, or maybe I would have just been doing that from the very beginning. But yeah, that's what I would without a doubt would tell myself. Bet bigger as well. I bet pretty small early on,
safe,
and it's scary.
Cautious.
Yeah, super safe, super cautious, and I probably needed that, but I was too safe, too cautious for too long, and I probably stayed in my corporate role 2 or 3 years longer than I needed to, or I didn't have the ability to choose to leave. Right? Yeah. I mean, I kept going in, as you know. I mean, I kept going in for a number of years because I liked it. I was getting a lot of recognition, and I was making a lot of money, so it was like, okay, this is kind of cool. But yeah.
And so in life in general, like, right, we all encounter people that are generally like coming from a place of maybe negativity, glass half full, the deck stacked against me. I wasn't dealt the right, hand of cards, all of that stuff. You seem like and sound like a generally pretty positive individual, right? What do you say? What do you do to those people when you encounter them, right? How do you help them go from this glass half full kind of mindset to, or glass half empty, mindset to glass half full mindset?
So there's two things. The first thing I would say is just being able to share my own story. If there's something that I can relate to and I can share with that person, because I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so I can understand probably a lot of the scarcity mindset where that comes from, and I don't just mean financial scarcity, but just the glass half empty, because I've also been there, so I can empathize. And so sometimes it's about being able to share a story, or how can I share a story that will potentially help that person to recognize, like, hey, this is just a moment in time. Yeah. Like, this is not going to last forever, or help to give them some perspective on that. But if it's somebody who's going to continuously wallow in negativity and glass half full, I don't spend my time with those individuals, because I don't want that in my life. So I'll be there, I'll listen, I'll try to aid. But if it's just going to be that constant, those are people that are not part of my life. Yeah. because I don't want that energy.
Yeah. Exactly. I couldn't relate more. I generally just want positive energy. So I try to surround myself with positive people. I like to help, of course, but I'll try once, try twice. If it doesn't work and they're not listening, then, too bad.
Yeah, so it's like that old adage that says, if it happens once, shame on me, or if it happens once, shame on them, and if it happens twice, shame on you, meaning you as in me. And so, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Life is way too short to try and convince people that are negative to not be negative.
Totally. And if you were to pick one key that unlocked your success, Billy, what do you think that is?
Empathy and relationships. I know you said one, but
they go together. We'll wrap it as one. Why do you say that?
Because it's about being able to understand. Similar to what we were just talking about. Empathy, being able to understand someone else's perspective, and also being able to create relationships. And what I've realized is that the things that allow us to move forward are usually about getting some education, getting some accountability, and also being able to be and run with the right teams. And teams are about relationships and people. And whether that was when I was in my corporate role, the times that we won as teams, it was because we had the right people with the right direction. And even now, and serving today, the clients that we serve, it's because we've built the right relationships, we've invested the right amount of time, we've understood the direction, and it's a very similar philosophy. But I believe that the success comes through the empathy and relationships.
Yeah, I love it. I couldn't agree more. Right, we're all people in life, right? Every endeavor in life will be made or broken by people, all of us, right?
Yep.
And as we get close to wrapping this here, Billy, do you have a book recommendation and a tool or technology recommendation for our audience here? Things that you've obviously recommending, but that have helped you maybe achieve success in life?
Yeah, so I'll start with the technology first, because it's really interesting, like what happened with the pandemic, because most people thought that there was this new technology called Zoom that just started during the pandemic.
Exactly.
And I've actually been using it since like 2013, 14, something like that. So I would say, and it goes back to what we're talking about with relationships, and someone who, because I live in Europe, and the areas that I choose to invest in and serve are those people that are living in the US. It's been a great way to continue to build relationships, right? When we couldn't fly back and forth, or being able to meet a number of different people, in lieu of being able to meet face-to-face or prior to meeting face-to-face, right?
Yeah.
So I would say without a doubt, technology-wise, for me, it is, in mine, the choice is Zoom is what I tend to use. In terms of book recommendations, the one book that, there's a lot of different books, and I'm reading a book that's actually really, really interesting right now. But the one that's made, and without a doubt, the one that I recommend the most is the one that helped me to really, truly start to understand the importance of not just macroeconomics, but also the different players that are involved, and the way that there are like the geopolitical scene. And it's a book that you've probably heard of, and it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Don't know if you're familiar with it or not. So The Creature from Jekyll Island. I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it, yeah. It is without a doubt the thing, because I thought The Creature from Jekyll Island, what is this about Jekyll and Hyde and all this other kind of stuff? And so you start realizing that with the foundation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, there were a lot of things that happened prior to that, and a number of things that have happened after that continue to affect many of us, or if not all of us, around the globe. And just to think that the Federal Reserve is not federal, nor does it have any, any reserves, is kind of pretty funny kind of concept. But G. Edward Griffin, it is without a doubt one of those, and it's one of those books that I go back and reread just to refresh. And every time I read it, pick up something new. But that is one, especially if you are someone, I talk to a lot of people who are high wage earners who are looking to understand exactly, what are some different strategies that you can employ. A lot of it, when you can start to understand the macroeconomic environment around you, it's one of those places. It's a huge book. It's one of those, I bought the book and I also bought the Audible. And so I listened to it on 2x speed and stuff like that. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put those two. Well, Zoom, I think at this point everybody knows Zoom, but Zoom and the book recommendation will both go in the show notes. And awesome. Last question I have here for you, Billy. You do a lot of amazing stuff, including one of my favorite podcasts of all time that I listen to religiously every week. How can our audience get in touch with you if you so choose? How can our audience help you? What do you want to plug before we let you get out of here, Billy?
Yeah, sure, man. And I appreciate this format, Nathan. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share a little bit of my experience with you. And I love the fact that we can talk about life. It doesn't always just have to be about investment stuff. One of the things that we do is at First Generation Capital Partners, which is my company, we help people who are accredited investors who are interested in generating not only consistent returns, but also interested in keeping more of your income through income tax. And that's something that we're really strong on. If someone wants to know more about that, it is for accredited investors only. They can go to firstgencp.com/pay-less-tax. Once again, firstgencp.com/pay-less-tax. Find out more about some of the strategies we're using there. Also, as you mentioned, the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels. I'd love for people to come over and listen, talk about being able to live in one place and invest where it makes the most sense for you. And I would say, lastly, I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. Like, I really do. It's just it's a great place, and I know, Nathan, you and I chat over there as well. Yeah. And so I think I'm the only Billy Keels in Barcelona, Spain, I believe. So it should be pretty easy to find me.
You, so it's not that hard.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy to find me. So just let me know that you heard Nathan and I here speaking on the general art of crushing it. And we can keep the conversation going. But aside from that, I think those are the best ways to find out more about me, what we're doing at First Generation Capital Partners. And like I said, Nathan, I really, really, really just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to share a bit more of my story today.
Wonderful. With that, Billy, we'll make sure to send everyone your way. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Billy. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.